What does it mean to be a good person? How do we decide what is right and what is wrong? These are some of the oldest questions in philosophy. For centuries, thinkers have debated where our moral principles come from. Are there universal rules that apply to everyone, everywhere, and at all times? Or do our ideas of right and wrong depend on our culture, our personal beliefs, or the specific situation we are in? This fundamental disagreement is at the heart of the debate between two major schools of thought. One is called Moral Absolutism, and the other is Moral Relativism. Each offers a very different way of looking at our ethical lives and the choices we face every day. Understanding this debate is more than just an academic exercise. It has real and profound consequences for how we structure our societies. It shapes our laws, our approach to international relations, and our personal judgments about the actions of others. When we condemn an act as a violation of human rights, are we appealing to a universal standard of justice? Or are we simply imposing our own cultural values on others? The answers to these questions define our world. They influence how we think about everything from social justice movements at home to the justifications for war on the global stage. Exploring these two perspectives helps us clarify what we truly believe. This essay will explore the ultimate showdown between these two powerful ideas. We will begin by examining each view on its own terms. We will look at what moral absolutism claims and what moral relativism proposes. We will consider the arguments that support each side, as well as the significant challenges and weaknesses they face. The goal is not just to define these terms, but to understand what is at stake. We want to see how these abstract theories play out in the messy, complicated reality of human experience. It is a journey into the very foundation of our moral world. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves which framework makes more sense. Is one view clearly superior to the other? Or is the truth somewhere in between, in a more nuanced and flexible approach? We will consider whether a middle ground is possible, one that respects cultural diversity while also upholding certain fundamental human values. By the end, we will have a clearer picture of this great philosophical debate. It is a debate that invites us not just to think, but to reflect on our own moral compass and decide how we ought to live our lives together in a complex and interconnected world. Moral absolutism is the belief that certain actions are inherently right or wrong, regardless of the context or the consequences. This view holds that there are universal moral laws that apply to all people, in all cultures, at all times. These moral rules are not created by humans, they are discovered. Thinkers like Immanuel Kant argued for this kind of view. Kant believed that moral duties, which he called categorical imperatives, were binding on all rational beings. For an absolutist, a rule like "do not torture innocent people" is not a matter of opinion. It is an objective, unchanging truth about the world, much like the laws of mathematics or physics. The main features of moral absolutism include its universality and its objectivity. The rules are the same for everyone, without exception. If lying is wrong, it is wrong for a king just as it is for a commoner. It is wrong in the 21st century, just as it was in the ancient world. This provides a strong and stable foundation for making moral judgments. The strengths of this position are clear. It offers moral certainty and clarity. It gives us a solid basis for condemning acts like genocide or slavery, no matter where or when they occur. It supports the very idea of universal human rights, suggesting that every person has inherent dignity that must be respected. However, moral absolutism also faces significant weaknesses. Its rigidity can be a major problem. Life is complicated, and sometimes moral rules seem to conflict with each other. For example, if lying is always wrong, should you lie to a murderer to save a potential victim's life? An absolutist might struggle with this dilemma, as breaking one absolute rule seems necessary to uphold another, like the duty to protect innocent life. Critics argue that absolutism is inflexible and fails to account for the complexities of real-life situations. It can seem insensitive to different cultural traditions and individual circumstances, leading to intolerance. Consider the classic example of a starving person stealing a loaf of bread to feed their family. A strict moral absolutist might say that stealing is always wrong, period. The circumstances, no matter how desperate, do not change the moral quality of the act itself. This seems harsh to many people. It highlights the central challenge for absolutism: how to justify these universal rules and apply them in a way that is both consistent and humane. Where do these absolute laws come from? Some root them in divine command, others in human reason. But proving their existence to a skeptic remains a difficult philosophical task. In direct opposition to absolutism stands moral relativism. This is the view that moral judgments are only true or false relative to a particular standpoint, such as that of a culture or an individual. There are no universal moral truths that hold for everyone. Instead, what is considered right in one society might be considered wrong in another. And according to the relativist, neither society is objectively correct. Famous thinkers associated with this view include Protagoras, an ancient Greek philosopher who claimed that man is the measure of all things. This idea suggests that we, as humans, create our own moral realities. There are different types of relativism. Cultural relativism argues that morality is determined by the customs and beliefs of a particular culture. What is right is what a society approves of. Individual relativism, also known as subjectivism, takes this a step further. It claims that morality is a matter of individual opinion. For a subjectivist, the statement "stealing is wrong" simply means "I disapprove of stealing." The main strength of relativism is its promotion of tolerance and its respect for diversity. It encourages us to understand other cultures on their own terms, rather than judging them by our own standards. It avoids the charge of cultural imperialism. However, the weaknesses of moral relativism are profound and troubling. If morality is entirely relative, then we lose any firm basis for condemning actions that seem universally horrific. For example, if a culture practices slavery or honor killings, a strict cultural relativist would have to concede that these practices are morally right for that culture. This conclusion is deeply unsettling to most people. It makes the idea of moral progress impossible. How could we say that abolishing slavery was a good thing if morality is just a matter of what a society happens to believe at a given time? This leads to what is often called the reformer's dilemma. Social reformers like Martin Luther King Jr. or Susan B. Anthony challenged the prevailing moral codes of their societies. According to cultural relativism, they were, by definition, acting immorally because they were going against their culture's accepted norms. This seems to get things exactly backward. Furthermore, relativism can lead to moral indifference or inaction. If we cannot judge other cultures, then we have no grounds to intervene to stop atrocities or defend human rights globally. It leaves us unable to say that some moral systems are better or worse than others. When we apply these theories to real-world issues, the differences become stark. Take the concept of universal human rights. An absolutist would argue that these rights are grounded in a universal moral law. The right to be free from torture is absolute and applies to every human being simply because they are human. A relativist, however, might argue that the modern concept of human rights is a Western invention, and that imposing it on other cultures is a form of cultural dominance. They would point to different cultural traditions that prioritize the community over the individual, leading to a different understanding of rights and duties. In discussions about the ethics of war, an absolutist might hold that certain acts, like targeting civilians, are always wrong. These are moral lines that can never be crossed, no matter the strategic advantage. A relativist might argue that the morality of an act of war depends on the cultural context or the specific goals of the conflict. This could be used to justify actions that others would find abhorrent. Similarly, in debates on social justice, an absolutist framework provides a strong foundation for demanding equality and fairness for all based on universal principles. Relativism, in its extreme form, could undermine these efforts by suggesting that justice is just a matter of cultural preference. Is there a way to move beyond this standoff? Perhaps the choice is not between a rigid absolutism and a chaotic relativism. Many philosophers have tried to find a middle path. This approach, sometimes called moral pluralism or soft universalism, acknowledges that there are some core moral values that are likely universal. For example, almost every culture has a rule against murder within the group and values some form of care for the young. These common principles could form a kind of global ethic. At the same time, this view accepts that there is a wide range of legitimate cultural variation in how these core values are expressed and prioritized. In the end, a purely relativist position seems unsustainable, as it robs us of the ability to make meaningful moral judgments. A purely absolutist position often seems too rigid and disconnected from the complexities of human life. The most sensible approach may be a blend of the two. We can hold firm to a small set of fundamental moral principles, such as the inherent dignity and worth of every person, while remaining open-minded and respectful of cultural differences on other matters. This allows us to condemn genuine evil while still celebrating the rich diversity of human experience. It is a more challenging path, requiring constant dialogue and reflection, but it is perhaps the most promising one for our interconnected world.